We are here for another week of our alumni interview series. And this week we have Thomas Dhome-Casanova sharing with us a bit about his entrepreneurial journey, experience at LaunchX, as well as his startup that he's working on now, SureLight Tech. So to get us kicked off, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, as well as, I guess, starting out with what got you started into entrepreneurship?
Sure. So my name is Thomas. I'm a student at Princeton University. I'm a sophomore studying electrical engineering with a certificate in computer science. I'm going to address what got me into entrepreneurship. And I'd say what got me in was really robotics. I did a ton of robotics before getting into entrepreneurship. So I built drones, I built racing cars in school, did some stuff in like electronics classes, building like doorbell systems, because that's what we did in our gripping electronics classes. And then before LaunchX, I was starting to have the idea of, could I turn my ideas that I had every evening into products that anyone could use and might improve the world? So then I applied to LaunchX, sort of like, I don't know if entrepreneurship's for me. Seems like you need some like specialist knowledge that's like crazy, and I don't know how to get started. And then came to launch, met a bunch of awesome friends, and now I really am into entrepreneurship, and that's what I do with robotics. I haven't dropped the robotics, but it's like I've combined the two passions now.
Yeah, I remember you had an awesome passion for technology, and it seemed that you really wanted to be able to like bring that love of technology to the world. So yeah, I guess tell us a little bit about how you started to apply that a little bit at LaunchX, because I remember you had quite a passion for that.
Yeah, so at LaunchX, I had been doing mainly physical things. So I wanted to try with the people I met. I thought, hey, how about we build a software thing? I've done a bunch of hard, like physical things like cars and drones. How about I build something that's software related? So we're all using at the time two-factor authentication to log into all of our devices. So that's where you would log in with a password, and then Google would send you a text with a little number. You'd enter the number, and then you'd go in and log in. But we thought, what happens if your phone's dead or something and you can't access your phone? Well, then you can't log into your two-factor website. So we made a system to sell to websites, which would allow it to use your webcam to identify your facial features, check it was you. So that'd be the first factor of authentication. And then the second factor would be your password. So that eliminated the need for Google to keep sending you passwords and you having to keep typing in passwords from Google. So that was our idea. We built a very quick MVP, showed it on launch day with some nice GIFs to show how it worked. And yeah, it was very exciting to build it in a month, but we did it.
Yeah, so I got to explore a little bit of kind of like the software side of things, it sounds like. So is your passion a little bit more on the hardware side then?
So yeah, so we found that it was really hard to sell on the software side of things, such a base product. So I then decided that I would pivot back to doing hardware when I went back to school, mainly because I had a lot more experience in hardware. So that's when I decided with my friends that I wanted to create a company after launch. So we came up with the idea of how about we try and keep cyclists safer on the roads? Because for me, entrepreneurship is all about how can I make the world better? And it would be amazing if people bought the thing that would make the world better. So you don't have to pay tons in philanthropy to make the world better. So I thought, keep cyclists safer on the road every day, because lots of people cycle and we need to encourage people to cycle to keep the planet from warming up too much. So we built a system that would detect when a cyclist was braking, and it would flash red whenever a cyclist was braking. So it had an accelerometer in it like a phone, and it could detect that. We entered a European competition for it called Young Enterprise, and then went through the different rounds in the UK and then the different rounds in Europe until eventually we won. And that's when we thought, hey, lots of people bought our idea because we sold our prototype all around the country. Maybe we should add on this. And so that's where we've been going with SureLight Tech, is how can we use research that's been done into cyclists, into cars and vehicles on the road, and keep everyone safer on the road.
Oh, cool. So you got some great validation then from that competition. Yeah. And like, I guess, have you been doing some prototyping with it? Like, what other kind of progress have you made aside from the competition?
Yeah, so that competition was really the minimum viable prototype. We printed the cases on a 3D printer in our basement the night before the competition. Then we'd on the train to the competitions, we'd assemble these things together on the train, so it looked kind of crazy. You had like loads of kids on a train putting together these batteries and PCBs and 3D printed cases. And then we get to them, throw them in a cardboard box, and people would still want to buy them. So we were like, okay, this is all well and good, but it's not based on research. So we went back to the research when we were at university, and the research said we needed to change the color, we needed to change the brightness, and we needed to change the flashing pattern. So 3 things if we wanted to catch people's attention. So then we went to the chip manufacturers and thought, okay, we need to do these 3 things. How can we do it? And we decided we'd not only measure the acceleration and deceleration of a bike, we'd also measure the distance to a car. So first it would go and tell the cars behind if it's braking, so like a regular car, and then it would also do hazard lights in orange if a car got too close. So like that, we hit off all the research points, and we were keeping cyclists 100% guaranteed safer on the roads, well, from a research perspective.
Well, I love the entrepreneurial scrappiness of like putting things together on the train on the way to this competition. Like I feel like every entrepreneur has had that moment of like last minute pulling something together
Exactly.
to be able to like make it for something. Well, and you said that like the research showed that you needed to adapt some certain portions of it, you know, after like even like selling some things early on. And I love that like you sold some things early on, got some of that like validation and was like, yes, all right, awesome, people like this, but they would like it even better if there were some adjustments. And that's common for startups, right? Like you have some people buy it, but you still need to keep iterating. So when you say like research showed, like how did you collect that feedback? Like what was that research? Because I know this is something that a lot of early startups struggle with, is like how to collect that data.
Yeah, so I'd say the first research that we did was very much user feedback. So we went in the park, and we asked every cyclist, like, do you like your bike light? Do you hate your bike light? Why do you hate it? And after annoying very many cyclists with questions, we eventually compiled a list of things we could do. And then the budget constraints, we went, okay, we can't do this, we can't do this, we can't do this, and we have to do this. So that was for the MVP, was get something out there, see what people like, but obviously make sure your MVP actually is targeted from some initial user testing. So we got our MVP out there. That was the first year. And then based on a year of feedback, you get a good idea of what people really like about your product. After all of the like cutting down that you did to get to that first MVP, and then you can make it more precise for the final, it's never final, but a more final product. And then the research that I was talking about the American Transport Board, was we were more focusing then on literature because we had just moved to university. So we were very much into reading our papers from university. And that is something that we more looked into at university than before. I'd say at the start, most important is to get user feedback. But if you're looking to keep people safe on the road, or generally things that are harder to prove, it's very hard to prove that your product's safer than another thing. You can't always ask people that question. Like no one's going to be able to know it unless you've got verifiable facts and papers. So talk to people, then go to papers.
Love it. Awesome. Yeah, and then I know you're doing a little bit more versions of testing. So that was some of like early testing to get some pieces of for that first MVP. And then I know you're doing some additional testing right now. So I guess tell us a little bit about the Kickstarter testing that you're doing right now.
Yeah, so we decided that we'd launch a Kickstarter. We decided we had worked on the product enough. And we wanted to see what the world thought about it, get some additional feedback from cycling communities. So we launched our Kickstarter at the start of October, end of September, to see what cycling communities thought about it, to get people to see our product, because it's without paying for advertising. You can just put it on Kickstarter and Kickstarter will push it to everyone who's visiting the site. So you're getting loads of techies, or for our product, lots of people who might be interested in the product. And you're also going to get, when you put it on Kickstarter, lots of media attention, because newspapers and journalists are going to Kickstarter to look what's the new idea that's coming up. So what's really important to us, and what should be important to a lot of startups, is how can you market your product without paying for marketing your product? So for us, this was a great way to get our product out there.
Yeah, which I know there can also be a little bit of like a chicken and an egg though. Like I know a lot of people, when they do a Kickstarter, they put a lot of promotion behind it in that like kind of first day to get it out there as well. So there's, I guess, that little bit there as well. So I mean, I guess like, so what have been some of the things that you've learned from some of those like cycling communities or other things, like as you've, because I guess from people that I know that have done Kickstarter campaigns, some of the things that they might have learned were that their customer base is in a different location than they might have expected, or yeah, just different unique things. So I guess, have there been any kind of revelations that you've come across from doing this?
Yeah, so what we were worried about when we were launching on Kickstarter is some irrelevant things. So for example, we thought, well, Kickstarter is mainly in the US, so maybe it won't give us too much market feedback because all of the users are in the US. But what we actually found was, launching in the UK, yes, there were a lot of people in the UK that liked our product, but there was also a lot of people in the Southeast Asian markets that were really interested in our product. And we would have never thought originally that would be a good place to target our product. But because the World Wide Web is worldwide, by launching your product onto a place where lots of people can see it, you can very quickly do testing and see who's going to stay on your site for the longest, from which parts of the world. And then from there, you can see, oh, actually, maybe our users aren't in this part of the world, they're in this part of the world, which means you can save money in the long run by targeting better your marketing.
Awesome. And I think you also had mentioned to me a little bit beforehand that you've had some people reach out to you, some potential like great connections as well from being on there.
Yeah, so you've got to remember, whenever you're launching a Kickstarter or any sort of marketing campaign, there should be primary aims. So for Kickstarter, the primary aim is you're trying to sell your product, but there's also a secondary aim. So for Kickstarter, as I was explaining, there's a lot of media exposure, but there's also distributor exposure. So what this Kickstarter has allowed us to do is not only go to direct, like B2C, but also B2B, because businesses can see your promo video, they can see that you're really, like, your product's a great product and that people are interested in it. So you can have like secondary aims. And for us, we've gotten lots of contacts through that as well.
Yeah. And if other folks were to be putting together a Kickstarter campaign, are there like a few top tips that you'd have for them?
I would say definitely build traction before launch. That's really important. You need to have a prototype of your product. Otherwise Kickstarter will invalidate your page. So make sure you've got that. And don't worry about failing. Get your product out there, fail quickly. That's the most important thing I can say.
Yeah, because I mean the marketing from it alone,
the marketing from it is huge anyway. You'll learn, you'll be able to pivot. And even though lots of people may see your page, you'll only get enormous amounts of people if you do well. So it's not as if, like, no one's going to see you on the street and go, oh, you're the person from Kickstarter if you fail. Like, you're just going to get the marketing from it. You're not going to lose from it.
Yeah, it's part of the learning process, right? And it's a much cheaper learning than you know, making a ton of the product and having a ton of inventory, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what else should we expect to see from SureLight Tech in the near future then?
Well, we're gonna go through with our Kickstarter, and then really we're gonna take it from there. As a startup, you've got to be able to pivot very quickly. So for us, when we don't plan too far ahead, we made sure when we started our Kickstarter that we had our supply lines in place, because we didn't want to tell people that they'd be getting their product a year down the line. We wanted to make sure that the price we were giving to people was an actual price that we could deliver on. So we did some very careful planning to make sure our budget was good, and our supply lines were good. So, yeah.
Okay. All right, and then this is kind of like bringing it back to a little bit more of you as an entrepreneur.
Yes.
So what motivates you as an entrepreneur?
For me, I would say it's about helping the world. As I said, with why we chose to make cyclists safer. My friends and I were thinking, what are some key issues in the world that we can fix? Back in high school, we were like, we can't fix huge problems like climate change, but maybe we can tackle a subset of it. So I'd say as an entrepreneur, what drives me is trying to fix the world as best I can through like inventions that people want to buy.
Yeah. And if you were to give advice to high schoolers who want to get into entrepreneurship, what advice would you give?
I would say get started early. As I've said before, fail fast, fail often. Everyone says it because it's true. And you shouldn't feel constrained by the ideas you have currently. You shouldn't feel constrained by the skills you have currently. The whole point of entrepreneurship is it will be scrappy, but you'll learn on the job. And you'll just make do with whatever you have. And if you have a good idea, then people will come to it. There's no need to perfect the idea before you launch it.
Absolutely. I love it. Yeah, getting started early is awesome. I know when I was working in the Entrepreneurship Center at MIT, we had something that we called T equals 0, which basically meant like the time to start is now. T equals 0. And it was a kickoff the first week of MIT. The intent of it being that if you get started that first week, then you have a better escape velocity when you leave MIT. And if you wait, then the ramp up is, it's still good, but
Exactly.
It's not quite as high. So the sooner you start, the sooner that ramp up is. So absolutely, just get started sooner. Well, thank you so much for joining, Thomas. I'm really excited to see how things continue to progress with SureLight Tech. I know
Nice
that
to see you
go
too.
far, and it's as well with you as an entrepreneur. I know that you have awesome motivations. So thank you all, everyone, for joining here, and continue to join in for more of our alumni interview series. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Laurie. Bye.